Today's odds, 2%. That's the probability the market assigns to Donald Trump hugging an Iranian official. Low, yes, but it coincidentally matches the success rate of American Middle East strategy. But, let's be fair. The war did achieve one clear strategic objective. For an entire quarter, almost nobody talked about the Epstein files. Welcome back to Prediction Market Prof. I'm Professor Benjamin Smart, and today we're breaking down the fine print of the war Donald Trump just lost. We'll explain why this week's interim agreement is a short-term sugar rush for equities, oil, and inflation, but why structurally the United States is worse off than before Trump tore up the Obama-era deal. And finally, we'll highlight the single best mispriced trade on the board. Not financial advice, obviously. This is a prediction market show, not a monastery. So, Trump finally capitulated. He'll call it a victory, of course. I mean, if Trump fell down a flight of stairs, he'd declare the stairs had surrendered. But the midterms are approaching, and there are only so many Truth Social posts one man can fire into the void before voters notice petrol costs a lot of money. Prices have to come down before the polls open, and basically that's the entire game. The administration's two core strategies, that is, bombing things and threatening apocalypse in capital letters on Truth Social, were great for cable news, but terrible for shipping lanes. So, now the climb down. Reportedly, this new framework includes access to blocked Iranian funds, sanctions relief, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and the lifting of the US naval blockade. For scale, the Obama-era Iran settlement that Trump spent years complaining about involved $1.7 billion in cash. The reported blockaded funds figure here is $25 billion. That is 14 times larger. Nothing says art of the deal quite like spending 3 months breaking the furniture, then paying $25 billion to call the carpenter. So, let's break down the paperwork. First, this isn't a final peace deal, it's an interim memorandum of understanding. Anyone telling you now that they know exactly what's in the final text is either lying or already writing for Fox News. But there is a leaked version that we might pay some attention to. The prediction markets certainly are. Second, the Strait of Hormuz. The math here is simple. Iran stops choking the strait. The US lifts the naval blockade, ships move, oil drops, inflation eases, and the stock market breathes into a paper bag and decides it's brave again. That's why markets rallied. Third, the nuclear issue isn't solved. The agreement kicks it into a 60-day negotiation window, and whilst Iran hasn't officially agreed to end uranium enrichment permanently, it looks like that might be on the table in the short term. They've agreed to discuss limits and inspections, and frankly, I'm not sure that they're really in a position to enrich lots of uranium right now anyway. Remember, discuss is doing a lot of diplomatic Pilates here. Fourth, Lebanon is the fault line. Iran says the deal requires Israel to withdraw from Lebanon. Netanyahu says Israeli forces will remain in security zones for as long as necessary, which is the diplomatic equivalent of saying we read the group project and decided not to participate. It's enough to move markets, but it isn't peace. It's a ceasefire wearing a clip-on tie. Now the trades. First up, the same position I previously said couldn't lose. I suppose for compliance purposes, technically anything can lose. Polymarket can resolve very strangely, God can send interns. So, manage your risk. But the logic remains overwhelming. No on a permanent peace deal between Israel and Hezbollah by June 30th. Hezbollah is not the Lebanese government, wasn't then, still isn't, and Israel isn't leaving Lebanon, so you can't build a permanent peace treaty on a temporary pause meant for everyone to just basically reload. It's not a glamorous trade, it's just the market rediscovering gravity. Second, the Iran enrichment market. The contract asks if Iran publicly agrees to end all uranium enrichment by June 30th. Now, Iran are not going to give up their enrichment program permanently. The JCPOA allowed enrichment to 3.67%, enough for nuclear power. And Iran aren't going to give Trump more than they gave Obama. Why would they? But the contract will resolve yes if Iran agree to a temporary halt in enrichment. And a leaked version of the agreement suggests they'll agree to exactly that. Which makes sense, right? Both parties can claim victory. Trump can claim that Iran agreed to stop enriching uranium, and Iran can say that they're not surrendering 1 single gram of their enriched uranium. That's basically how these things work. If both can claim victory, it's a plausible deal. So here's the structural reality of the next 2 months. Ships are likely to start passing through Hormuz. It'll take time for the moving average to normalize, but the direction is clear. Iran desperately needs the cash. Trump desperately needs oil supply. Everyone needs a press release that sounds less like a hostage negotiation. Trump declares victory, Iran declares victory, Qatar smiles politely in the background, as is tradition. But Israel is going nowhere. Trump wants lower pump prices and a midterm election survival story. Netanyahu wants security zones and coalition survival. Those goals overlap for about 12 minutes before they start fighting over the steering wheel. At the end of the 60 days, Iran's leverage remains completely intact. They can reopen Hormuz, bank the cash, stabilize the regime, and politely remind Washington that the strait is not controlled from Mar-a-Lago in 60 days' time. Is the MOU substantive? Well, yeah, absolutely. Energy-sensitive sectors are certainly going to benefit. Anyone who hates expensive fuel wins, which is basically everyone except oil executives and people who sell candles during blackouts. Is it a great deal? No. It's almost certainly worse than the JCPOA. The grim punchline is that this entire crisis was made possible because Trump tore up that agreement in the first place. The JCPOA wasn't poetry, it was plumbing. But plumbing matters. You only notice when the house fills with enriched uranium, I suppose, in this case. The market is currently pricing in a pause in Iran enriching uranium. I think that's right. What do you think? Am I missing a grand bargain here? Or is this just a pause before the next big panic? Let me know your position in the comments below. Thanks for watching Prediction Market Prof, and I'll see you on the next one.